My name's Joe Friday, and I've been a cop for 14 years. Growing up, I loved watching Dragnet reruns, imagining how Jack Webb and Harry Morgan solved cases in an hour. In real life, solving crimes isn't nearly so simple, but I still love the job, almost as much as I love my wife Lydia and our two daughters, Kira and Brittany. My family is everything to me, and I'd do anything to keep them safe and happy. But lately, things haven't been quite right. Last Monday, Lydia made my favorite dinner, something she hadn't done in a while. Then, she told me she planned to go out with some friends on Friday. Usually, I wouldn't think twice about it, but this time felt different. When I asked who'd be there, she looked away and mumbled a few names, avoiding my eyes. It set off alarms in my head. I have a sort of sixth sense about people, the same skill I use at work to spot when someone's lying or hiding something. I decided to let it go for the moment, though her behavior left me unsettled. That evening, I took some time to reflect on how we met and the life we built together. 12 years ago, I pulled Lydia over for speeding, and there was an instant spark between us. I could barely believe it when she agreed to go out with me after I wrote her a ticket. We hit it off immediately, and 2 years later, we got married. We've shared everything ever since, from raising our girls to celebrating each other's successes. Our lives were busy, but we always made time for each other. Trust was the foundation of our marriage, and up until now, I'd never doubted her. But recently, it felt like we'd both been changing in ways I didn't fully understand. Over the years, Lydia and I developed a system to safeguard our marriage. We knew the temptations that could arise, and we were always open with each other. She'd sometimes mention when someone got too friendly at work, and I did the same whenever a woman tried to get close to me at a party or through work. I had no reason to believe Lydia would be unfaithful, but lately, things between us seemed strained. Over the past 6 months, the change had been subtle, but real. She started dressing a little differently, putting extra effort into her appearance, and often had her mind somewhere else. At first, I brushed it off as nothing, but her strange behavior was making me uneasy. And now, her looking away as she mentioned her plans for Friday made me think that there was more to it than just a girls' night out. My own behavior hadn't helped matters. About half a year ago, I'd responded to a horrific scene that hit me harder than any case I'd dealt with. A man had shot his wife and 2 young children before trying to take his own life, a tragedy I couldn't seem to shake. When I first arrived at the house and found the lifeless children on their beds and the wife in the bedroom, it was all I could do to stay focused. In his last moments of consciousness, the shooter told me he had done it because he couldn't bear to see his family torn apart after discovering his wife's affair. His words haunted me, and I became obsessed with the thought that if something so terrible could happen in their marriage, could it happen in mine? I returned home after that shift feeling shaken, unable to tell Lydia the full details of what I'd seen. Over time, though, my obsession with the case began to affect me more and more. I grew distant, spending evenings at the club where the other officers hung out and avoiding real conversations with Lydia. I found myself constantly on edge, watching her every move, wondering if I could still trust her the way I used to. When she brought up going out with her friends, I offered to spend the night with the girls, hoping to make up for all the times I'd neglected them lately. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't help wondering if there was something more behind her plans. Over the next few days, my suspicion grew. I noticed her packing a bag with a sleek new black dress and lingerie she hadn't mentioned to me. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I watched and waited, feeling helpless as the trust in our relationship slipped further away. I knew I had to do something, so I decided to surprise Lydia with flowers, a gift she'd always loved. I left a bouquet on the porch without my name on the card, hoping she'd bring it up as a way to reconnect. But when I asked about them, she lied, saying she'd bought them herself. That lie felt like a punch to the gut. In my line of work, I knew that a small lie often covered something larger. As Friday drew closer, my anxiety only increased. I tried to suggest that we take a family trip instead, but Lydia grew frustrated, accusing me of only showing interest now that she was making plans without me. Our daughters noticed the tension, and I could see how my behavior was affecting them too. I felt torn between my suspicion and my love for her, unsure of what to do. Finally, the night before she was supposed to go out, I laid it all out for Lydia. I told her about the case that had haunted me, about how I couldn't shake the image of that family and the horror that could come from betrayal. I opened up about the paranoia I'd been feeling, the fear of losing her, and the helplessness I felt. Lydia broke down in tears, revealing that she'd been worried about my behavior too, fearing I'd been seeing someone else. My withdrawal and late nights at the club had made her feel abandoned. She admitted she'd dressed up and gone out because she thought she was losing me and wanted to catch my attention. She even confessed that a coworker, Matt, had been pursuing her, but she'd turned him down. But when she got flowers with an unsigned card, she thought he had sent them, and her fear of upsetting me made her lie. Sitting there, the truth spilled out between us, and for the first time in months, we felt like we were finally facing each other again. As the conversation went on, the tension that had been building between Lydia and me finally released. I could see the hurt in her eyes when she admitted how my distance had affected her. The guilt hit me hard. I'd been so focused on my own pain and suspicions that I hadn't realized how much she was hurting too. Lydia told me that Matt's attention had been uncomfortable from the start and that she had been avoiding him as much as possible. But my detachment and time away made her doubt herself. She started questioning if she wasn't good enough for me anymore, which was why she had put extra effort into her appearance and accepted her friend's invitation to go out. Hearing all of this forced me to confront how I'd failed her. As I listened, I could see the truth in her face, and for the first time in months, my fear and jealousy started to fade. We both realized how far we'd let things slip. We'd always prided ourselves on honesty and open communication, yet we'd fallen into a pattern of hiding our true feelings, letting our insecurities breed suspicion and mistrust. She confessed that the flowers, which she'd assumed were from Matt, had panicked her. She was afraid to bring them up, thinking I would accuse her of cheating. I told her I'd sent them myself, hoping it would prompt her to be open with me. But it had only added to the misunderstandings, pushing us further apart. In the silence that followed, Lydia looked at me, her eyes filled with remorse. She said that she never wanted to hurt me and that she would do anything to make things right. She even apologized for lying about her plans and about the flowers, admitting that fear had kept her from being honest with me. Her voice broke as she said, "I should have trusted you to understand." With all the truth out in the open, I took her hand and told her that I had failed her too. My obsession with the murder case had blinded me, making me lash out at her instead of seeking her support. In my effort to protect her and the girls from the darkness I saw at work, I'd shut her out. I could see now that I'd hurt her as deeply as she'd hurt me. That night, we lay side by side, holding each other in a way that we hadn't in a long time. The emotional weight between us felt lighter, and for the first time, we both spoke freely, each apologizing for the things we'd done and said. Lydia told me she hadn't felt so close to me in months, and that she wished she'd been braver, opening up sooner instead of retreating into herself. She looked at me and said, "I thought you'd stopped loving me." Hearing that broke my heart. I told her I'd always loved her, even through the worst of my suspicions and jealousy. I was relieved that we'd faced the hard truths together. I promised her that I'd do whatever it took to keep our trust strong, that I would never let my fears drive us apart again. We spent the rest of the night together, finally reconnecting as a couple, finally putting our fears to rest. That weekend, we followed through with our original plan, taking the girls to the amusement park and staying overnight, just the four of us. Lydia and I shared meaningful glances, the relief between us unmistakable as we watched our girls laugh and play. Seeing them so carefree reminded us of what was truly important. As a family, we were whole again. In the weeks that followed, Lydia and I recommitted ourselves to being open and honest, no matter how difficult or uncomfortable it might feel. We found time to go on dates again, reconnecting over small, shared moments. I left the club behind, instead bringing my stresses home and talking them through with her. We both knew now that silence was our worst enemy, and we were determined to face everything together. One day, Lydia told me that she wanted to start fresh, even suggesting we renew our wedding vows. She said that we'd come through one of the hardest times of our lives and that our love was stronger for it. Standing across from her in a small, private ceremony, I felt like the luckiest man in the world. In the years since, we've faced new challenges, but never again have we doubted each other. The lessons we learned are ones we carry with us daily: trust, open communication, and a willingness to be vulnerable. We've built a stronger bond on that foundation, one that I know will endure. Reflecting on it all now, I see how close I came to letting fear destroy what we had. That case, those horrific images, had taken over my mind, convincing me that what I had could vanish in an instant. But in working through it, I found an unexpected lesson. To protect what you love, you sometimes have to lay down your guard and let the people closest to you in. If this story resonates with you, consider subscribing to my channel for more stories about love, life, and finding strength in difficult times.